While the world was distracted by diplomatic theater and empty headlines about ceasefires, something far more dangerous was happening in the shadows. In the dead of night, at remote air bases and heavily guarded ports across Iran, a silent invasion unfolded. Not troops, but something far more lethal. Advanced weapon systems, cutting-edge technology, and strategic lifelines from three of America's most formidable adversaries: Russia, China, North Korea. They didn't come with flags or fanfare. They came with S-400 batteries that now stand like silent sentinels across Iranian mountains. They came with hypersonic missile blueprints, electronic warfare systems capable of blinding entire fleets, and drone swarms designed to overwhelm the most sophisticated defenses on Earth. This is not mere cooperation. This is the birth of a Steel Quadrilateral, an undeclared military axis that has quietly transformed Iran from an isolated target into a fortified fortress at the heart of the Middle East. For years, Washington and Tel Aviv believed they could contain Iran through sanctions, sabotage, and surgical strikes. They were wrong. In recent months, Russian transport aircraft have made repeated runs under the cover of darkness. North Korean engineers have embedded themselves in underground missile cities. Chinese financial networks have kept Iran's war economy breathing, bypassing every Western sanction with ghost tankers and yuan-dominated trade. The message is unmistakable. Iran is no longer fighting alone. And now the balance of power in the Middle East is shifting faster than most analysts are willing to admit. Israel's much-vaunted air superiority is facing its greatest challenge yet. America's carrier strike groups in the Gulf are staring down threats they were never designed to face at this scale. The era of unchallenged dominance is cracking. How did this happen so quickly? How advanced has Iran's arsenal truly become under this shadow alliance? What happens when the next spark ignites and the full weight of this new axis is unleashed? Tonight, Shadow War Reports pulls back the curtain on the most dangerous geopolitical development of 2026, the silent landing of Russian, Chinese, and North Korean power onto Iranian soil. We will expose the weapons, the strategies, the turning points, and the terrifying implications for Israel and the United States. If you want the unfiltered truth behind the headlines, the kind of analysis mainstream media refuses to touch, hit like right now and subscribe. Turn on notifications. This is information that matters, because what's unfolding in the shadows today will shape the battlefield of tomorrow. In this episode, how Russia is building an impenetrable sky shield over Iran, why North Korea's firepower could turn the Gulf into a graveyard, how China's money and technology are making Western sanctions irrelevant, and the critical turning point that could send Israel into an irreversible spiral. Stay with us. The shadows are speaking. Let's cut through the noise and examine what actually happened on the ground and in the skies. In early 2026, tensions that had been simmering for years finally boiled over. What began as limited Israeli strikes on Iranian nuclear and military facilities quickly escalated into a broader shadow conflict. Between March and May 2026, Iran responded with a series of calculated, high-intensity operations that caught both Washington and Tel Aviv off guard. According to intelligence assessments leaked to Western media, Iran launched over 450 ballistic and cruise missiles across three major waves in a single 72-hour period. This included more than 180 hypersonic-capable Fatah II variants, 120 medium-range Imad and Ghadr missiles, and hundreds of Shahed 136 drone swarms. The scale was unprecedented. The primary targets were Israeli air bases in the Negev and northern sectors, as well as U.S. military installations in eastern Syria, Iraq, and the Persian Gulf. Initial reports indicate at least 7 Israeli F-35 hangars were damaged, while 2 U.S. logistics hubs in the region suffered significant infrastructure losses. Estimated combined damage exceeds $1.2 billion in the first week alone. What made these attacks particularly effective was the tactical doctrine Iran employed, a textbook example of modern saturation warfare. Iranian forces first unleashed massive waves of low-cost Shahed drones to overwhelm and exhaust Israeli and American air defense systems. Once radars were saturated and interceptors depleted, the real strike package followed. Precision-guided ballistic missiles traveling at speeds exceeding Mach 5. This swarm and strike tactic proved devastating. Israel's Iron Dome and Arrow 3 systems, designed primarily for shorter-range threats, were pushed to their operational limits. Multiple sources confirmed that interception rates dropped below 65% during the heaviest barrages, a significant decline from previous engagements. The role of external support became immediately visible. Russian electronic warfare systems, particularly the Krasuka-4, were detected jamming GPS signals and disrupting NATO data links across the region. This forced many Western precision munitions to revert to inertial navigation, dramatically reducing accuracy. Meanwhile, North Korean-derived re-entry vehicle technology allowed several Iranian missiles to perform terminal phase maneuvers, evading interception. Chinese Beidou satellite guidance upgrades provided Iran with redundant navigation systems, ensuring missiles could still hit targets even when American GPS was degraded or denied. On the defensive side, Iran demonstrated remarkable resilience. After absorbing initial Israeli airstrikes that destroyed surface-level facilities, Iranian forces rapidly dispersed into pre-prepared underground networks, many of which had been expanded with Russian and North Korean engineering assistance. These missile cities allowed Iran to maintain launch capability even under heavy bombardment. Casualty figures remain heavily contested. Iran officially reported 87 military deaths and 340 wounded. Independent estimates place Israeli military casualties in the low dozens, with civilian deaths in Israel reaching 41. U.S. forces reported no fatalities, but acknowledged several dozen injuries from drone strikes on bases. The most significant outcome was not the physical destruction, but the psychological and operational shock. For the first time in decades, the Israeli Air Force was forced to limit deep strikes into Iranian territory after losing 2 F-35s and 1 F-15 to advanced surface-to-air systems believed to be upgraded S-300 PMU-2 variants, supplied and maintained by Russian technicians. This phase of the conflict revealed a new military reality. Iran has successfully transitioned from a purely defensive posture to a credible regional strike capability, heavily enabled by its shadow alliance. The question now is no longer whether Iran can retaliate, but how much more firepower the Steel Quadrilateral has prepared to unleash if the conflict reignites. Beyond the immediate clashes lies a more disturbing reality: the rapid transformation of Iran's military capabilities through advanced foreign technology. The Steel Quadrilateral is not just supplying weapons, it is fundamentally upgrading Iran's entire warfighting architecture. At the core of this upgrade is Russia's contribution. The S-400 Triumph air defense system now forms the backbone of Iran's Sky Shield. With a maximum engagement range of 400 kilometers and the ability to track up to 80 targets simultaneously, the S-400 has turned large swaths of Iranian airspace into a no-fly zone for conventional aircraft. Russian technicians have reportedly integrated the system with Iran's existing S-300 networks, creating a layered, multi-tiered defense that is far more resilient than anything Iran possessed before 2025. Complementing this are Krasuka-4 electronic warfare systems. These mobile platforms can jam radar signals across a 300-kilometer radius and disrupt GPS and satellite communications. In recent engagements, Krasuka units successfully degraded the performance of American and Israeli precision-guided munitions, forcing many to miss their targets by hundreds of meters. From North Korea, Iran has received critical ballistic missile technology. The most significant transfer involves re-entry vehicle designs and solid-fuel propulsion systems derived from the Hwasong series. This has enabled Iran to improve the Fatah 2 hypersonic missile, which now reaches speeds of Mach 12 to Mach 15 with terminal maneuverability. Unlike traditional ballistic missiles, the Fatah 2 can change trajectory within the atmosphere, making interception extremely difficult for systems like Arrow 3 or Patriot PAC-3. North Korea has also supplied designs for super heavy multiple rocket launchers, similar to the 600mm KN-25. These systems can saturate an entire military base with hundreds of rockets in under a minute, overwhelming even the most advanced short-range defenses through sheer volume of fire. China's role is more subtle but equally decisive. Beijing has provided advanced navigation solutions through the Beidou satellite constellation, giving Iran a fully independent GPS alternative with centimeter-level accuracy. This upgrade has dramatically improved the precision of Iranian cruise missiles and long-range drones. Additionally, Chinese dual-use technology has accelerated Iran's drone program. The latest Shahed 136 variants now incorporate AI-assisted swarm coordination and better stealth coatings, allowing groups of 50 to 100 drones to operate in coordinated attack patterns. These low-cost platforms, priced at around $20,000 each, force Israel and the U.S. to expend million-dollar interceptors, a devastatingly asymmetric cost equation. What makes this alliance particularly dangerous is the level of integration. Russian air defense systems are now protected by Chinese early warning radars. North Korean missile technology is guided by Chinese satellites. Iranian engineers are no longer simply assembling foreign weapons. They are modifying and improving them, creating hybrid systems that blend the strengths of all three partners. This represents a significant shift from Iran's previous dependence on reverse-engineered 1980s technology. Today, Iran can produce advanced components domestically, while relying on Russia, China, and North Korea for the most sensitive technologies it cannot yet manufacture at scale. The strategic implication is clear. Any future military campaign against Iran will no longer face an isolated regional power, but a technologically hybridized adversary backed by the combined industrial and scientific base of three major powers. For Israel, this means its traditional qualitative military edge is rapidly eroding. For the United States, it means its power projection in the Persian Gulf now carries much higher risks and costs than at any time in the past 3 decades. The weapons have arrived. The technology has been integrated. The only question remaining is when and how this new capability will be fully unleashed. But there was one moment, one critical turning point, when everything changed. In the early hours of April 17, 2026, during the heaviest barrage of the conflict, Israel and the United States crossed an invisible threshold. What was meant to be a limited precision operation suddenly spiraled out of control. The decisive blow came when Iranian forces, using Russian Krasuka electronic warfare systems combined with Chinese Beidou guidance, completely blinded and overloaded Israel's multi-layered air defense network. For the first time, the Arrow 3 and David Sling systems failed simultaneously under sustained saturation attacks. Interception rates collapsed from over 85% to less than 40% in under 2 hours. This was the moment the myth of Israeli invincibility cracked. The critical mistake was clear. Both Washington and Tel Aviv had underestimated the speed and depth of integration between Iran and its shadow allies. They believed they were fighting a lone, sanctioned nation. Instead, they faced a real-time fusion of Russian air defense doctrine, North Korean hypersonic technology, and Chinese satellite resilience. The domino effect was immediate. As air defenses faltered, Iranian missiles struck key Israeli air bases and intelligence facilities with shocking accuracy. The psychological shock inside Israel was profound. Within hours, emergency war cabinets were convened, and evacuation plans for major cities were quietly activated. This turning point revealed a new battlefield reality. Iran can now impose unacceptable costs on any aggressor. The era of short, decisive strikes against Tehran is over. You are witnessing what most mainstream media refuses to say out loud. If this conflict reignites in the next 24 to 48 hours, the risk of full regional escalation is extremely high. Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Iraqi militias are already on high alert, ready to open new fronts. The Steel Quadrilateral has not only armed Iran, it has given it the ability to turn a local conflict into a global crisis. The point of no return may already be behind us. While Iran consolidates its new strength, Washington finds itself in an increasingly difficult position. The United States has responded with familiar tools, aircraft carrier deployments to the Gulf, new sanctions packages, and strong rhetorical warnings. However, behind the public statements, American officials are grappling with a harsh new reality. Intelligence reports suggest the Pentagon is urgently revising its war plans for the region, acknowledging that any large-scale military operation against Iran now carries significantly higher risks and costs than previously calculated. The Biden administration, or whoever occupies the White House in this period, faces a painful dilemma. On one side, Israel demands decisive American support and even direct intervention. On the other, the U.S. military is wary of being drawn into another prolonged Middle East conflict, while simultaneously managing tensions in the South China Sea and Eastern Europe. America's allies present an equally fragmented picture. NATO remains largely hesitant. European members have expressed concern over potential oil price shocks and refugee flows, but have shown little appetite for direct involvement. Several Gulf Cooperation Council countries are maintaining calculated silence. Saudi Arabia and the UAE, once vocal opponents of Iran, are now prioritizing economic stability and have quietly opened back-channel communications with Tehran. Israel stands as the most exposed actor. Having relied for decades on its qualitative military edge and unconditional American backing, it now faces a nightmare scenario, fighting a technologically upgraded Iran supported by Russia, China, and North Korea. Israeli leadership has increased airstrikes and covert operations, but each escalation appears to accelerate Iran's integration with its shadow allies rather than deter it. The United States is no longer dealing with a simple bilateral conflict. It is confronting a sophisticated proxy network. Every strike on Iranian soil is now met with faster and more advanced retaliation, thanks to the rapid technology transfers from Moscow, Beijing, and Pyongyang. Strategically, Washington appears reactive rather than proactive. Years of maximum pressure sanctions have failed to prevent Iran from building this new axis. In fact, the pressure itself has pushed Tehran deeper into the arms of America's great power competitors. The uncomfortable truth is that U.S. power projection in the Middle East is being challenged more seriously than at any time since the end of the Cold War. The carrier groups that once symbolized unchallenged dominance are now operating under the shadow of advanced anti-ship missiles and swarming drone tactics. America's traditional dominance is not yet broken, but it is clearly under strain. The question is whether Washington will adapt its strategy before the costs become unsustainable. Beyond the battlefield, a much larger geopolitical game is unfolding. The true architects of Iran's transformation are not in Tehran, but in Moscow, Beijing, and Pyongyang. Russia's role is that of the Iron Protector. Moscow has seized the opportunity to turn Iran into its forward military outpost in the Middle East by supplying S-400 systems, Su-35 aircraft components, and electronic warfare platforms. Russia is not only defending Iran, it is directly challenging American air dominance in the region. For Putin, this is strategic payback. Every advanced system deployed in Iran drains American resources and attention away from Ukraine and Europe. In return, Russia gains access to cheap Iranian oil and a permanent foothold in one of the world's most critical energy corridors. China plays the role of the invisible mastermind. Beijing avoids direct military involvement but provides the financial oxygen and technological backbone that keeps Iran alive. Through its shadow fleet, China purchases nearly 90% of Iran's exported oil, paying in yuan and bypassing Western sanctions entirely. More importantly, Chinese satellite technology, precision electronics, and AI components have dramatically upgraded Iran's missile and drone capabilities. China's long-term objective is clear: accelerate the decline of U.S. hegemony in the Middle East while securing its own energy lifeline and expanding the influence of the Belt and Road Initiative. North Korea completes this dangerous triangle. In exchange for hard currency and political protection, Pyongyang has transferred some of its most advanced ballistic missile and hypersonic technologies. North Korean engineers are reportedly embedded in Iran's underground facilities, helping develop weapons that could one day threaten U.S. bases across the region. Together, this Steel Quadrilateral represents a new model of authoritarian cooperation. Unlike NATO, there is no formal treaty. Instead, they operate through pragmatic, transactional relationships: weapons for oil, technology for strategic distraction, money for influence. This axis has successfully turned Iran into a high-value proxy that bleeds American power without forcing Russia or China into direct confrontation. Every missile Iran fires, every drone swarm it launches, serves the broader goal of reshaping the global order from unipolar to multipolar. The United States now faces its greatest strategic nightmare, fighting not just one resilient nation, but an integrated network of great power adversaries working in coordinated silence. For the first time since the end of the Cold War, America's traditional military superiority in the Middle East is being systematically neutralized by the combined weight of its three most determined rivals. In modern warfare, technology and weapons only tell part of the story. The decisive factor that often determines victory or defeat is willpower, the willingness to endure pain, sacrifice, and prolonged suffering. In this regard, Iran holds a significant, often underestimated advantage. The Iranian people and its Revolutionary Guard have been forged through decades of sanctions, isolation, and repeated military threats. This has created a hardened national psychology rooted in defiance and survival. For many Iranians, this is not merely a geopolitical conflict. It is an existential struggle for sovereignty, dignity, and resistance against what they perceive as Western imperialism. This deep ideological commitment allows Iran to absorb heavy losses and continue fighting when other nations might seek compromise. The concept of resistance economy and strategic patience is deeply embedded in Iranian doctrine. Even as their cities face potential bombardment, millions of Iranians are prepared to endure hardship, viewing it as a necessary price for independence. This spirit is particularly strong within the IRGC and Basij forces, where martyrdom and sacrifice are not abstract ideas, but core values. In contrast, the United States and Israel face a different reality. American public support for prolonged military engagements in the Middle East has dramatically declined after decades of costly wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. War fatigue runs deep. Every American casualty and every $1 billion spent triggers intense domestic political debate and media scrutiny. Israel, while possessing strong national resilience, is a small country with limited strategic depth. Prolonged conflict places immense psychological pressure on its civilian population. The Iron Dome may protect against rockets, but it cannot shield society from the exhaustion of living under constant threat and economic strain. This asymmetry in willpower is critical. Iran can fight a war of attrition. Its leadership is prepared to accept high costs over years if necessary. The United States and Israel prefer short, decisive campaigns. When a conflict drags on and costs mount, the side with stronger internal resolve often gains the upper hand. The Steel Quadrilateral understands this perfectly. By arming Iran and providing strategic depth, Russia, China, and North Korea are not just supplying weapons. They are buying time for Iranian willpower to grind down Western patience and political will. In the end, battles are won with technology, but wars are often decided by who is willing to suffer longer. Zooming out from the battlefields of the Middle East reveals a much larger transformation taking place in the global order. What we are witnessing in Iran is not an isolated regional conflict. It is a critical chapter in the accelerating shift from a unipolar world dominated by the United States to a multipolar reality where power is increasingly shared and contested by rising blocs. The Steel Quadrilateral, Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran, represents a new model of strategic cooperation. These nations have no formal military alliance like NATO, yet they coordinate more effectively than many formal alliances. They share technology, bypass sanctions, exchange battlefield lessons, and support each other's strategic objectives. Their common goal is clear: to erode American global hegemony and create a world where no single power can dictate terms. For Russia, success in Iran weakens NATO's focus on Europe. For China, it secures energy routes and challenges U.S. control over vital maritime choke points. For North Korea, it provides legitimacy and hard currency. For Iran, it offers survival and regional influence. Together, they are proving that collective resilience can neutralize Western economic and military pressure. The United States now faces a strategic nightmare. Its traditional advantages, technological superiority, financial dominance, and alliance networks are being systematically challenged. Sanctions, once a devastating weapon, have lost much of their power. The dollar's role is slowly being circumvented through alternative payment systems and de-dollarization efforts. Meanwhile, America's military is stretched thin across multiple theaters. Israel finds itself in an even more precarious position. Once seen as an untouchable outpost of Western power in the Middle East, it is now confronting a fortified Iran backed by great powers. Its long-term security is increasingly dependent on a United States that is growing weary of unconditional commitments. This conflict is accelerating the birth of a new international system, a system where spheres of influence are being redrawn, where economic and military power are more evenly distributed, and where smaller nations can survive great power pressure by aligning with the right partners. The Steel Quadrilateral has demonstrated that determined states working together can rewrite the rules of the game. The illusion of permanent American unipolar dominance is crumbling before our eyes. The question is no longer whether the world order will change, but how violently that transition will unfold. The shadows have spoken. What we are witnessing in the Middle East is far more than a regional conflict. It is the visible fracture of the old world order. A steel quadrilateral, Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran, has quietly formed and is now challenging American and Israeli dominance with unprecedented coordination and resolve. Iran has been transformed from a sanctioned pariah into a fortified outpost backed by three major powers. The era of easy military victories and unchallenged supremacy in the Gulf is rapidly coming to an end. Whether this leads to a dangerous regional war or a new, uneasy balance of power remains to be seen. But one thing is certain: the geopolitical landscape of 2026 is fundamentally different from what it was just 2 years ago. Shadow War Reports does not take sides. We simply expose the hard, cold realities of great power competition that mainstream media often chooses to soften or ignore. Now we turn to you. What do you think will happen next? Will the United States and Israel adapt and regain the initiative? Or will the Steel Quadrilateral continue to reshape the Middle East in its favor? Will we see direct confrontation or continued shadow warfare? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. The most insightful analyses will be highlighted in our next video. If you believe this kind of unfiltered, in-depth reporting matters, hit the like button, share this video with others who need to see it, and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a critical update. The world is changing rapidly in the shadows. Stay vigilant. We'll see you in the next report, where the next move in this dangerous game could change everything. Thank you for watching.